If you're watching this video, I'd have to imagine you're already well aware that there's a big collective shift in consciousness taking place. The vibration of the planet is increasing. Chaos, as a result, is ensuing as these higher frequency energies clash with the lower frequency energies of the planet, of the systems in place, and of us, the individuals. And this upgrade is quite taxing on the nervous system and very overwhelming for the psyche. But if you find yourself just so happen to attracting videos of this nature, it means you're built to navigate these waters. The same waters that might overwhelm most people don't have to overwhelm you because you have an inner guidance system that was literally designed for this exact scenario. But like me, you may have forgotten this. You may have forgotten your role here. You may have forgotten the fact that you probably have done this many times before. And what this video is going to aim to do is remind you of what you already know deep down inside of yourself so that you can ride these waves with grace, with precision, and serve as the example you came to be in this world right now. You came to show other folks how to surf these waves because you've probably done it before. So just to start, what a lot of you might be experiencing is a lot of overwhelm of awareness, as if somebody suddenly turned the lights on in your cluttered closet. And it's like, oh boy, there's a lot of work to be done in my closet, in my life, in myself. You start to wake up gradually to the degree of misalignment that exists in your life. And it can be quite startling. It can be overwhelming physically, it can be overwhelming emotionally, and it can feel like you just literally have too much on your plate and you don't even know where to begin. You know what you want, you know where you'd like to be in your life, your ideal, but the more lights you turn on, the more stuff you discover that's just getting in the way. And you might find yourself, in a sense, caught between two realities. The one that's emerging, albeit slowly and vaguely, in the form of incomplete inspired ideas, little glimpses into what your future might look like. And then also the many different ties you have to the current one. And you can feel like there's just not enough energy or bandwidth or time to realistically make your way to where you want to go. And the more you look around in your closet, the more reasons for that you find. I can't do this. I can't become this. I can't manifest this because of this, that, and the other. And this, that, and the other is going to represent a few different things. One of them is your actual tangible life circumstance. I can't go over here and do this because I have this job, because I have this obligation, because I have this responsibility, because I live in this city. You also might notice there's an internal component to that as well. I can't be a YouTuber, for example. That was my thing. I had busy jobs, a busy life. I was overwhelmed and it was breaking down. Nothing was working. I was feeling increasingly stressed, overwhelmed, and depressed. And parallel to that, these desires to be free, these desires to be a YouTuber, these desires to live 1,500 miles away from where I currently lived started coming on so strongly. Like, man, I belong out there. I belong being a YouTuber. You might feel that too. You might feel there are times where you just know that over there is me. This is not. Why am I so stuck here? And you might find yourself just like in this conflict, this push and pull sort of situation with no way out. But the video here is all about how there is a way out. Appearances can be very, very deceiving. And the reason you feel this way is because you're in the transition, you're in the process of sort of shifting realities. People call it shifting timelines. I don't know about all that. It just means you're in the process of waking up to who you actually are and are going through the necessary steps in order to make that happen. Your brain, your biology, even at a very base rudimentary level, is wired to gravitate towards pleasure and avoid pain. That's just how we roll. That's how the corporations manipulate us, basically, by dangling these little these bright lights in front of our face to entice us. But so what I'm saying is that it's inevitable. It's inevitable. The more you wake up, the more aware you become of a circumstance that's no longer serving you, the more uncomfortable you're going to feel, the more motivated you're going to be to do what you got to do to shift things. The more energy and signals and vibrational intent you're going to start casting in this other reality. And even though for a time it can feel like implausible, weak, your fire is slowly building bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually it's going to engulf the other life. But this video is all about how to not be overwhelmed in the transition. That's the tricky part. How do you actually manifest and upgrade your life in these non-linear, like higher level ways, while still being kind of forced to play the 3D game with your job, and you might have to, mow the lawn and do all these practical things you don't really want to do. And in my experience, it can be done. And that's what this video is about. So the first thing you must do is clean up the messes in your life. And I know it's like, oh my God, where to begin? Start somewhere. I know for me, for a long time, one of the things keeping me from moving and becoming a YouTuber was something I neglected for several months. At that time in my life, my entire basement was sort of decked out into a grow operation. An entire basement. I had multiple grow rooms with probably 12 to 15 high intensity, like 1,000-watt light bulbs, and it was hydroponics, so there's reservoirs and tubes and drains and air conditionings and all this stuff going on. And during my transition, I felt this feeling to let it all go and to move on. So what I did initially was just I discontinued my activity down there. But what I had left was the entire infrastructure of the grow room. There was old plant matter, and every time I went down there, it just had this extreme level of clutter and neglect and decay. There was spider webs and bugs, and it was very, very icky to go down there. So I avoided it for a long time. But eventually that mess, of course, didn't clean itself up. And eventually I realized I have to deal with this. This must happen in order for me to move on. I knew that. It was a very logical, practical thing that I couldn't avoid. But what I found, to my surprise, is that when I finally kind of forced myself to go down there into my gross basement and start cleaning out the moldy, gross reservoirs and taking down the dead plant matter and dismantling all the different, planks and whatnot that held up my grow rooms, what I found is that the process, to my surprise, was actually quite enjoyable. How could that be enjoyable, you wonder? It was a very drudgerous, yucky type of task that, for many reasons, I avoided for so long. But once I allowed myself to do it, I had fun doing it. And what eventually I realized, this isn't as bad as I thought. And initially, I didn't know why. But then eventually I realized it was because this is connected to my authentic path. This is connected to me moving closer to who I really am. And there's this feeling that, not just a feeling like some type of, feelings can be kind of deceiving. There is this somatic awareness of my nervous system and my energy body and my spirit finally being where it's meant to be, making its way home. Which for you, you might have a different definition of home. What's your ideal of home? Where do you know on a deep soul level you ought to be? You belong being, you belong doing. But circumstance, conditioning, patterns, fear kind of tripping you up. That's what this is all about, my friend. And I had this sort of misconception that I need to get home in order to not feel overwhelmed. I needed to make it so I don't feel so icky, so off, so in a place where I don't belong. But I realized I didn't need to get there. And by the way, also I realized that it's always moving. You never reach it anyways. But all we need to do is start making our way there. And whether it's doing the fun stuff, filming the videos, or breaking down, decluttering your closet, it's all the same vibrationally. It's all moving you closer to your true north. And it took me about several weeks to really make it where that basement was empty, and you would have never known all that went down there. Took me several weeks of daily work, and I just started chipping away at it. I'd go down there for a couple of hours a day. Eventually, I would bring like a radio, and I would listen to a book. I was listening at the time to this awesome book called Mastery by Rara Green, which, I just kind of grabbed the audio book without thinking too much about it, but it was so cool because of how synchronistic it was. It was all about the hero's journey. It was all about what I was going through. It was all about great success and how it doesn't always start from the place many people assume. Many very successful people started with very, very humble, challenging beginnings with many cards stacked against them. And I just happened to pick this book, and I was listening to it, and I was getting downloads and inspiration and synchronicity. And every single screw I undid, every single plant I disposed of, every little inch I made towards where I meant to be, I felt better and better and better and higher and higher and higher and more and more and more aligned. And I realized it's all about just being on the path we're meant to be on, not finding the destination. And I'm sharing this video with you now because many of you might feel overwhelmed because you think what I used to think. You have to be somewhere. And in your mind, you can't imagine how you're possibly ever going to make it. But what if you don't have to make it? What if all you have to do is take that next step and you're going to feel right as rain? Another thing I would like to address is timing. I know what adds to the overwhelm is this idea that you're like behind. In fact, do you feel behind right now? On your journey, on your path, in your life, on your mission? A lot of you probably do. And when we feel behind, that's not a good feeling. It feels like there's this stress, this tension, this pressure. But don't you think, and I had to learn this myself as well, and I have to remind myself this, but don't you think your higher self knows all this? The part of you guiding yourself, don't you think it's factoring in all the hesitations, the resistances, the quote unquote, I use this term loosely, failed attempts? Don't you think it knows all that's going to happen and anticipates that? So your arrival is actually right on time. Your higher self does. It also knows that you're going to learn a lot about yourself and a lot about life that is relevant to where you're heading in the transition, in the struggle, in the delays even. There's lessons in delaying. I'm going to the dentist. It's kind of a very embarrassing story. I'm surprised I'm going to tell it, but I'm going to the dentist a little bit later today. And I went, I'm embarrassed to admit, I went for about, like 7 years, like never going to the dentist. And it was just out of sheer laziness, honestly. And I didn't think I had any cavities. I take good care of my teeth. I floss and I brush and I use mouthwash once in a while and even teeth whiteners here and there, over the years. And I thought, you know what? I just don't need it. Well, as you can probably imagine, I finally did go to the dentist and was quite backed up. I had, I think, 6 cavities. 3 of them were massive. It was like, they were like appalled. They were like, you haven't been to the dentist in 7 years? Oh my God. So what I had to endure was the consequences of my neglect. And like my next 5 appointments in a row, which were like back to back, were painful. Big cavities getting filled, root canals galore, aggressive cleaning. My every time it was like painful and grueling. And I was in my head like, why did I do this to myself? But that stress, that being backed up, that neglect That was a lesson that stuck with me, that played out in many other areas of my life where I no longer neglect. I will do the things I don't feel like doing in the moment, like cleaning the basement or whatever it is you got to do. I'll do it knowing it's a lot better to do it now and get it over with than to let it accumulate. So my point is, even if you're backed up, even if you relate with and there's some neglect in your life, so what? Who cares? You're a human. As long as you learn from it, you can benefit from it. That's the other beauty about all of this. You can benefit from all these different things. Another example I'll run by you, but I bet it's relatable with many of you, is knowing where you want to be. Knowing where you are is not in alignment vibrationally, and that dissonance is bringing you down. It's making it almost impossible for you to feel aligned, inspired, motivated, in the moment, etc. That also is a powerful lesson. That's a powerful opportunity to up-level your ability to be rooted in yourself and not reliant on externals to feel good. It's possible. And this dude I met a while back, his name is William. He came to a couple of my retreats, and he had this cool idea for an app. I'm not sure if he ever did it, but it was basically a meditation app that did the exact opposite of what you would think a meditation app would do, which is, of course, to make it easier. Play binaural beats, and you just flip it on, and there's a timer. What his app would do is it would like play this like dissonant sounds that are like jarring and uncomfortable. But the goal was to see how meditative you can become with this distraction all over in your mind and your earphones, etc. And it's a way of strengthening that. Because I'll tell you what, no matter where you are in life, you're going to have things stressing you out, things pressing your buttons, things trying to weigh you down, whether it's coming from outside or most of which is going to come from on the inside. Anytime you chase a dream, your ego likes to rip you back down and keep you where it's safe and comfortable. But imagine you manifest yourself a circumstance that gives you the opportunity, if you choose to take it, to strengthen your ability to be more stoic, be more present, to find peace and safety and happiness within yourself. You're going to need it. Because what I found is when things get really, really, really good, that's also kind of not the truth. That's also kind of a distraction. That also has its own pitfalls. They call it inflation, egoic inflation. And it happens when you go on this journey and you're in the muck, going through the dark night of the soul, and then all of a sudden the tides shift. And luck is on your side. The wind is at your back. Things are moving. You are grooving. You are elevating. And all of a sudden, it's like you can't help but be proud of yourself. And the ego loves to take credit for these little mini successes. And then you fall down again. And whether you're having really good times or bad times, both are opportunities to just be detached in a healthy way. To not source your peace outside of yourself. To know that no matter where you are in life, you have the ability to feel good, to feel at peace. If you don't believe me, read the book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's for women too. It's just titled Man's Search for Meaning. It's by a psychologist named Viktor Frankl who lived through the Holocaust. In fact, he lived in Auschwitz. His entire family was killed. He lived in, of course, some of the most inhumane human circumstances that we could even fathom, a thing of nightmares. And he lived there for a long time. He eventually made it out. But towards the end, when he was literally just skin and bones, nothing left of his life, he realized that he could be happy. He found a way within his consciousness to accept the unacceptable. And he basically kind of like almost lifted his consciousness up to like a higher level. And he was able to soar above the circumstance. And he talks about it in his book. So if he can do it there, you could probably do it at the job with the narcissistic boss, or living in your apartment, even though you'd prefer to live in nature, or whatever your circumstances. I don't think any of us, if we're watching freaking YouTube or I'm filming YouTube, can even begin to compare ourselves to Viktor Frankl. And if he can do it, we can do it. And what a gift. What a gift to find peace. So what I'm trying to say, my friends, is this overwhelm is a choice, because you're better than that. You set this up for yourself so you could learn, so you could grow, so you could evolve, so you could motivate yourself to go and be who you're meant to be in the world, but do it also in a grounded, sustainable, spiritually mature sort of way. And then you can be an example for other people, because they'll see you doing it. You know, people watched me in my life go from the depths of heroin addiction, which I was a junkie back when I was like 19, 20 years old, to go from a heroin addict who had nothing going for him, burnt all his bridges, broke as a joke, on death's doorstep, to now impacting the world. And this is not just my arc. This is anyone's arc who chooses to use these circumstances in a proactive, positive way. That's always an option. And it's not easy, because so many people these days, they complain, they point the finger at Big Brother, the government, the war, the climate, the human beings in general, yada, yada. That has a certain effect. And so does thinking positively. So does taking responsibility. So does having the courage to dig deep and find your power. So does choosing to have faith. Maybe all the stuff I'm saying isn't empirically true. I can't prove any of this to you. But what does this belief do for you? I choose to believe that I can respond in a powerful and positive way to anything life throws at me. And that has served me for a very long time, whether it's true or not. Anyways, my friend, just want to kind of throw this out there to you, and mainly just to relate with you, because I say all these things as this is my ideal, just so you know. I don't do any of this perfectly, but far, far from it. But I wanted to kind of share and put a voice to what I believe your inner beings already been trying to tell you. And then together we can work at this formidable task we find ourselves with, living on planet Earth during the most powerful transitional period to date ever. And we are smack dab in the middle of it, riding these waves as best we can. And I figure if we can do it together and support each other, it'll just make it a bit smoother. So that's my intention. I'm out of here. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Peace.